Oh, I want to live in America so bad. I want to live in America so flipping bad. Like, I want to do.
America, what have you done to me? You have completely changed my perception of the world.
You know why I feel so happy in the US? I can express myself in every aspect. The way I speak, the way I dress, the way I walk, even like in my business, in my project, in my creativity, I can just be me.
That's not the words of an American. That is the impression of tourists who have just set foot in America during the World Cup. The strange thing is, when asked what they remember the most, almost no one mentions the Statue of Liberty, Hollywood, or Las Vegas. They don't talk about skyscrapers, nor do they mention the endless wide roads. What moves them are just the very small moments. A morning greeting, a stranger initiating a conversation, or a server addressing them with respect. Why do those seemingly ordinary things completely change millions of people's perspectives on America? Is it possible that the most appealing aspect of America has never been its beautiful scenery or wealth, but rather the way people treat each other? Today, we will seek the answer together.
Morning.
Morning.
That is so different.
Morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
How you doing?
Good, thank you.
Good. Have a nice day.
Thank you.
I will. Oh, God. Everywhere. People are too nice.
There's a detail that appears repeatedly in many videos of foreign tourists when they come to the US. It's not the crowded scene of Times Square, not the beaches in Miami or the skyscrapers, but it's just a very short sentence. Good morning. It sounds simple, but just look at their reactions. Some people just walked into the breakfast place and smiled awkwardly because the waitress greeted them with a smile as if she were meeting an old friend. Someone was standing in line to pay when the cashier asked, "How are you today?" Someone had just opened the door when a stranger held it open and said, "Have a great day." And the interesting thing is that the camera did not capture indifferent faces, but rather the surprised looks of the tourists themselves. They laughed. They looked at each other. Someone even blurted out a very honest remark. In my country, this is very rare. At first glance, many people would think, it's just a matter of politeness. That's right. But perhaps what's worth mentioning isn't the greeting itself, but the feeling behind that greeting.
One big thing that I really like about America as a Brit is people have got such good manners. So in the UK, and especially in Europe, you find people are starting to lose their manners. Now in America, everybody I see, most people are really polite. They're really kind and genuinely interested in what you're actually doing and, want to know your name. Even when you go into somewhere you go in the liquor store to buy some liquor. "Hi sir, how are you today?" And they actually genuinely want to have a conversation with you. They're genuinely polite, Whereas in the UK, it's like, and they even pack your bags in the Walmart, or in any grocery store.
Just think about it. In modern life, we pass by hundreds of people every day. Going to work, go to the supermarket, going for coffee. Most people are busy with their phones, with work, with their own thoughts. There are days when we almost walk through the crowd without actually interacting with anyone. So, when a complete stranger looks into your eyes, smiles, and says, "Good morning," your brain will immediately receive a very special signal. Not because the words were so great, but because in that moment, you feel seen, being recognized, being treated like a human being, not just a passing guest. A tourist once said something that resonated with many people. He just greeted me, and suddenly I felt happier that whole day. It sounds both cute and a bit funny. A greeting that can lift your mood for the whole day. But if you think about it, it makes perfect sense. Sometimes people don't need anything too grand. Just a little goodwill is enough to change the mood of an entire day. That's also why many reaction videos about America don't go viral for the beautiful scenery, but for the everyday moments. What Americans might consider normal can become a cultural shock for many tourists.
Why do I need to know the waitress' name? Are we going to dinner with her tonight or something?
This is what you guys eat instead of beans on toast for breakfast?
Yep.
Everyone talks shit about the World Cup in America and Canada. This is something we don't really have in Europe. These massive sports bars. There are already 8 on this side. There are TVs. These sports bars are absolutely fantastic. There's even like a second floor. Look, this is what you sit here. You drink your beer. You have, oh wow, even here there are TVs. They're like TVs everywhere. Big Bear came in. I found my friends. Look, you sit here. As I said, you have your beer. Cheers, man.
And perhaps this is the most interesting part. The people who leave a lasting impression on tourists are not Hollywood actors or famous personalities. They are just a cashier, a driver, a server, or a neighbor who happens to walk by. It is these ordinary people who contribute to the image of an entire country. If you find this story interesting, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to join me in videos like this. Because behind each seemingly simple clip, there are always perspectives on people and culture worth exploring together. And if a greeting can make people remember an entire country, what will happen when those tourists start stepping out of restaurants, entering supermarkets, strolling on the streets, and being treated like friends instead of guests? That is the story we will continue in the next part.
What else can I get for you?
That's everything. I mean, like a dirty, how do you call it? Like a dirty soda.
Yeah.
Dirty duck.
Is it like a dirty soda?
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, that's everything. Thank you.
Tell me what you're looking for. Please. Have a good day.
Thank you, and you. We got them.
There is a moment that appears frequently in videos of foreign tourists, but if we don't pay attention, we can easily overlook it. That's when they no longer hold their phones to film the tall buildings or the famous streets. Instead, they filmed a server chatting cheerfully and wishing them a good day. Or a stranger they happen to meet on their way to the stadium.
You're great. You're great. You know how to put on a great show. We'll do you, buddy. I'll listen to what you said, okay? See you later. Just arrived. Thank you. Thank you. Good luck. Freedom for Scotland. Honestly, if I was to turn my phone on every time someone says something nice or like, welcome or go Scotland or whatever, I wouldn't have any battery. But geez, you people in Boston are so lovely and friendly. Thank you for having us. Happy. Everyone's very friendly.
You see, the interesting thing is that those videos usually don't have any grand effects, just very ordinary conversations. But it is those very ordinary moments that receive millions of views and tens of thousands of comments. Why? Because the audience doesn't just see a conversation. They see a feeling that everyone has longed for, no longer being an outsider.
Kind of got scolded a little bit at Trader Joe's because I went to just ask for directions to the tofu shelf, and the person was kind of like, yeah, okay, just come on, like follow me. And also, good morning, how are you? And I'm like, yeah, sorry, good morning, how are you? Where's the tofu? I have like a million other things that I could share, but
This Finnish girl had a wonderful experience during her time living in the US. The small talk or conversations that lasted only a few minutes were enough to make her happy, and she exclaimed, "For the first time, I didn't feel like a tourist." At first glance, it might seem a bit exaggerated. Just a few minutes of conversation, but if you put yourself in the position of someone who is thousands of kilometers away from the restaurant in a completely foreign country, you will understand how precious that feeling is. As long as someone takes the initiative to start a conversation, the distance between me and them seems to disappear very quickly. That's also what I like the most when watching these reaction videos. They don't just react to food or scenery, they react to the way people connect with each other. A regular parking lot can also become the starting point of a conversation. A crowded supermarket can also be the place where a diligent employee guides you to find the right item. A breakfast restaurant can also become a place where you hear the phrase, "Have a wonderful day." Some people will say, "That's just a service skill." I think a little differently. The service can make you satisfied, but the feeling of belonging comes from things that are not in the job description. No one asks the guest at the next table to turn and strike up a conversation. No one asks a passerby to spend a few extra minutes giving detailed directions. Those are very natural actions, and it is that naturalness that surprises many tourists. Perhaps that's why many people, after the trip, don't remember exactly how much money they spent or how long they waited in line to enter a tourist attraction. What they remember are the faces of the people who appeared on that journey. A humorous driver, a waitress who always smiles, an old man wished them a pleasant trip. Those memories are not loud, but they last a long time. If you have ever had a similar experience while traveling, please leave a comment below. Sometimes, a very small story of yours can make thousands of others see themselves in it. And what makes tourists love America even more is not just the conversations with the locals. What surprises them even more are the places that Americans consider completely ordinary. Supermarkets, gas stations, 2-4-hour diners, or a roadside convenience store.
Okay, so recently, some of my videos ended up on Fox News, some incredible American platforms, and even on the Instagram page of the White House.
Every person we've spoken to so far, just there in that restaurant and all along the streets, some of the warmest, kindest, most down-to-earth people, and you can tell that they're really proud to be from here.
Oh, they're real. Oh, you say right there. On a scale of 1 to 10, where you put that? 10. Look at the Scottish people.
We love it. We love it.
There is something very interesting about watching hundreds of videos from foreign tourists after their trip to the US. At first, they all said they would go to enjoy the scenery, eat delicious food, see famous cities, or immerse themselves in the World Cup atmosphere. But the more you watch until the end of the video, the more you realize a very strange commonality. What they remember the most is not the tourist attractions, not Disneyland, not the Walk of Fame, not even the famous beaches. What they keep mentioning is the feeling of being welcomed.
What surprised me in Americans, which I didn't expect. No, you gotta listen to this. This is blow my mind a little bit. It was one of my cultural shock. It is how Americans are polite. Seriously, they are super polite.
An Australian girl walked into Walmart, and less than 5 minutes later, she was laughing like a child. She didn't just film the endless aisles or the giant cereal boxes. What she enjoys even more is when she is struggling to find an item, and a staff member proactively comes over to ask if she needs any help. Just a few simple instructions, but her reaction was as if she had just received a gift. Then a group of British tourists stopped by Waffle House early in the morning. They were eager to try the hash browns, pancakes, and American-style coffee. But what they talked about the most after the meal was not the taste of the food. They talked about the waitress who was always smiling, remembered every small request, and occasionally threw in a few jokes that made the whole table laugh. A normal breakfast suddenly became a memorable experience. Or like Buc-ee's, which many Americans only see as a rest stop on the highway. However, from the perspective of international visitors, it resembles a miniature world. They were both surprised by the store's size and delighted, because the staff and other customers were always ready to point out what they should try, which counters were worth visiting, or which local specialties they shouldn't miss. A quick stop to buy drinks and snacks suddenly turned into a cultural exploration. That's when I realized something. Perhaps America is not just selling destinations. They are inadvertently providing tourists with an even more valuable experience. The feeling of being welcomed wherever they step in. Actually, places like Walmart, Costco, Target, or Sonic were not built to become tourist attractions. They were created to serve daily life. But precisely because they are so ordinary, when international visitors see how people interact with each other in those spaces, they perceive a very different America. Not the America of postcards, but the America of everyday life. That's also why so many viral videos don't have grand scenes. Just a cup of water at Sonic, a shopping cart at Costco, a food tray at Waffle House, or an enthusiastic employee at Walmart. But each frame tells the same story. Here, I don't feel like a stranger. And if you pay close attention, you will see that this is something many tourism industries around the world are pursuing. People can invest billions of dollars to build more hotels, resorts, or amusement parks. But the feeling of being welcomed cannot be built with concrete or glass. It is made up of very ordinary people and very small actions. And speaking of this, perhaps many people will ask another question. If the actual experiences of many travelers are so positive, then why do many people still carry a lot of worries and prejudices before setting off? How significant is the gap between the media portrayal and what they actually witness with their own eyes? The media sells fear, selling the experience of truth. For a long time, the media has drilled into the heads of millions of tourists that the U.S. is an unstable country rife with crime, and almost every city is in a state of tension and chaos. Before the trip, quite a few people said something similar. Actually, I'm a bit worried too. Some people imagined that the locals would be cold and unfriendly. And there are also those who simply think that America in real life will be very different from what appears in the movies. However, the camera began to capture a completely different story, not a scene of chaos. Not the dramatic moments, but rather a morning with people queuing to buy coffee, a park full of people jogging, a family spreads a small blanket for a weekend picnic, an old man is walking his dog, a group of young people playing volleyball on the beach. And in the midst of all those very ordinary scenes, there are tourists continuously saying, "I didn't expect it to be like this." Actually, media and personal experience are two very different things. News has the duty to reflect noteworthy events, and the more unusual something is, the more likely it is to become news. A rare incident, a controversial phenomenon, or a surprising story always attracts more attention than a peaceful day, where millions of people still go to work, take their children to school, exercise, or have breakfast as usual. That's why, if you watch the news of any country for several weeks in a row, it's very easy to get the feeling that there are only worrying things happening there. Not because daily life is only like that, but because normal things rarely make the headlines. That's why the reactions of many tourists are so interesting. They don't say that the things they heard about don't exist at all. What they say is, "I have seen more than I thought." They see the peaceful neighborhoods. They see lively brunches on the weekends. They see people jogging, cycling, walking dogs, children playing in the park, and families sitting and chatting on the porch. Those are very ordinary scenes, but they rarely appear in the news. A couple stands at Miami Beach, looking around, and then laughing. They said something like, "People say this place is really scary, but what we see is people playing volleyball, jogging, cycling, and enjoying a beautiful, sunny day." That statement is not meant to deny the difficulties that any country may face. It simply shows a very simple truth. A real trip always brings more layers of experience than we can imagine from afar. Perhaps that's why travel always holds a very special value. It gives us the opportunity to replace imaginations with our own experiences. When you walk down a street by yourself, sit in a restaurant by yourself, and chat with locals by yourself, your perspective will become richer. No longer just fragmented pieces, but a picture with both light and dark colors. That's also something I really like about this wave of reaction videos. They don't try to prove that a country is perfect. They also don't try to argue with anyone. They simply share very sincerely. This is what I have seen with my own eyes. And sometimes, those simple stories are much more convincing than lengthy debates. If you also enjoy the way we look at an issue from many different angles together, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. That gives the channel more motivation to continue creating videos that delve into the stories behind the clips going viral on the internet. And speaking of this, there is something even more interesting. After a few days in the US, many tourists start to lose interest in the famous landmarks. Instead, they become fascinated with places that Americans pass by every day without paying much attention. Why can a supermarket, a gas station, or a 2-4-hour diner fascinate international visitors so much? There is a very interesting rule in travel that perhaps everyone has experienced. We often spend months planning visits to famous landmarks, but when the trip ends, what lingers in our memories are things that were not in the travel guide. And the United States is perhaps the clearest example. Watch the reaction videos that are going viral online. You will see an Australian girl standing in the middle of a gas station with a shocked expression just because it's so big and sells everything. An English guy bursts out laughing when he sees the self-refill drink station for the first time. Another tourist cradled an ice cup bought at Sonic as if they had just found a treasure. It sounds funny, but millions of views come from moments like that. The interesting thing is that Americans see all of that as completely normal. The yellow school bus runs by every morning. The drive-thru operates from morning to evening. A Target store packed with people on the weekend. Costco with shopping carts full of goods. H-E-B or Buc-ee's are just places to stop and buy things on the way home. But from the perspective of someone visiting the US for the first time, everything feels like an adventure. A tourist pushing a cart in Costco laughed and said, "I thought this was a supermarket, but it feels like walking through an exhibition center." The camera pans through wide aisles, tall shelves, gigantic food packages, and food sampling counters always staffed with people offering tastes. For the locals, it's just a weekend shopping trip. But for that guest, it was a cultural experience. Then there's Sonic. Honestly, if you ask many Americans what makes Sonic special, they would probably give a very simple answer. It's just a drink place. But for many international customers, especially those who have watched videos about American culture online, the tiny ice cups at Sonic become a main attraction. They are as happy as children just because they finally get to try the ice they had only seen on screen before. That's when I remembered a very interesting psychological phenomenon, but it can be explained in a very ordinary way. People often do not recognize the value of the things they see every day, not because they are not special, but because they have become too familiar. Have you noticed? We rarely take photos of the road we take to work every morning. Few people record videos of the familiar coffee shop at the end of the alley or the bus that runs on time every day, not because they are not memorable, but because the brain defaults to thinking, this is normal. However, when someone from another place sees those things with curious eyes, we suddenly realize it turns out our daily life also has very interesting aspects. That's also the reason why many American viewers comment under the reaction videos. I've lived here for decades and never thought Walmart could be so interesting. Or, thanks to watching their videos, I realized I had missed so many familiar things. I think this is the most beautiful thing that reaction videos bring. They not only help tourists understand more about America, but also inadvertently help Americans reflect on their own lives from a new perspective. They are all very ordinary pieces that make up the identity of a country. And after all those supermarkets, eateries, and rest stops, there is still a bigger question waiting for us. What is it that makes so many tourists leave the United States without remembering exactly what they bought, but always remembering the feeling they had there? The answer will be in the final part of the video. There's one thing I've realized after watching many videos of international tourists. They film for hours, travel through many cities, eat various local specialties, and visit famous landmarks. But at the end of the video, when asked, "What will you remember most about America?" the answer is rarely a landmark. Not a hotel, not a flight, not the ticket price, not even the food. Instead, it was the people. A waitress always smiles brightly. A stranger held the door and patiently waited for them to pass. A driver shared a few funny stories on the way. A sales assistant enthusiastically pointed out each item to try. Or simply someone passing by smiles and says, "Have a nice day." It may seem very small, but it is precisely those small things that appear in the memories of many people after the trip ends. Perhaps that is the most interesting thing about travel. People often think they will remember the places they have been, but in reality, we remember how others made us feel. You might forget the name of a street. You might forget which restaurant you ate at. You might forget what the weather was like that day. But it's very hard to forget the feeling of being treated with kindness when you're in a completely unfamiliar place. And I think that's also the reason why the phrase, "for the first time I was treated like a human," resonates with so many people. It is not a tribute specifically to America. It reflects a very universal human need. Everyone wants to be respected, listened to, and welcomed, even if it's just with a smile or a simple greeting. There are countries that you remember for their beautiful scenery. There are countries that you remember for their food. There are places that make you remember because of their history or architecture. But there are also places that leave an impression because of the people. And when watching these reaction videos, I feel that many tourists have brought back that very intangible gift. Perhaps the greatest thing about America has never been just the skyscrapers, the vast highways, or the gigantic shopping malls. What moves many people is the very simple feeling that, in a foreign country, they are still greeted with smiles, treated with respect and sincerity. And now, I would really like to hear your opinion. If you had the opportunity to go to the US, what would you look forward to the most? A famous landmark? Or the encounters with the people there? Please share in the comments. Because after all, what makes a trip memorable is not only the places we visit, but also the people who make us feel like we belong there, even if just for a fleeting moment. Perhaps after today's video, the most memorable thing won't be New York, Miami, or the gigantic supermarkets, but rather a very simple question. What makes a stranger feel welcome in a completely unfamiliar place? Sometimes, the answer does not lie in iconic landmarks or famous tourist spots. It lies in a smile, a greeting, a door held open, or a brief conversation with a stranger. It is those small things that have made many tourists leave America with the feeling that they not only had a trip, but also a beautiful memory of the people. And what about you? If you have ever been to the US, what do you remember the most? And if you have never been there, after watching the stories in this video, what surprised you the most? Please share your thoughts in the comments section. I always read a lot of comments, and who knows, your experience might become the topic for the next video. If you enjoy reaction videos combined with analysis about America, the economy, society, and lesser-known stories, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the latest content. Your support is a great motivation for me to continue creating higher quality videos in the future. This video is created for the purpose of commenting, analyzing, and sharing perspectives based on public videos, tourist experiences, and reliable information sources. The content reflects some typical experiences and viewpoints and does not represent everyone or every location. We always encourage the audience to consult multiple sources of information and form their own perspectives. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.